Okay, this is Alas Babylon by Pat Frank. And this edition is probably, obviously not the original. This is from, I think, 2005. Yes, 2005. But the original book by Pat Frank was copyright 1959. I don't typically review much fiction on this channel unless it has some relevance to some of the other material I talk about here. But Alas Babylon, many of you, if you're about my age, you might remember reading this in high school. This was part of, I think in ninth grade, this was required reading for our English class. And the interesting thing about this particular book is this is all about the United States being attacked in in a nuclear war, a nuclear exchange with Russia. And it, of course, wipes out a lot of major cities. It's kind of a post-apocalyptic, dystopian, I don't know if dystopian really fits it, but mildly post-apocalyptic because they basically have to do a hard restart on the society. But overall, interesting book. I read this in 1988, I think. And a lot of it stuck with me until now. And the way the nuclear attack is described, it's all from the perspective of just kind of a regular guy who then has to relearn all these basic skills that have been lost to, because of civilization, that he's having to kind of become basically the 1959 version of a prepper. But this is what I found interesting in going back and getting this book again. I had kind of remembered a little bit of this in my head. And of course, the title, Alas Babylon, is a nod to this. This is in the introduction, or not the introduction, this is the beginning of the book as the nuclear war is about to start. And I found this interesting. I'll just read this passage. It says, as soon as, this is talking about one of the characters, and I won't get into all that, but just starting out, this is her perspective of watching all this unfold. As soon as she saw Dave's face, Florence could sense whether the news was going to be good or bad. She's watching the news on TV here. On this morning, Dave looked troubled. And sure enough, when he began to give the news, it was bad. The Russians had sent up another Sputnik, number 23, and something sinister was going on in the Middle East. Sputnik number 23 was the largest yet, according to the Smithsonian Institution, and was radioing continuous and elaborate coded signals. There is reason to believe, Frank said, that Sputniks of this size are equipped to observe the terrain of the Earth below. Florence gathered her pink flannel robe closer to her neck. She glanced up apprehensively through the kitchen window. All she saw were hibiscus leaves dripping in the pre-dawn ground fog and blank gray sky above. They had no right to put those Sputniks up there to spy on people. As if it were on his mind also, Frank continued, Senator Haller of the Armed Services Committee yesterday joined others in a Midwest bloc in demanding that the Air Force shoot down Sputniks capable of military espionage if they violate U.S. airspace. The Kremlin has already had something to say about this. Any such action, the Kremlin says, will be regarded the same as an attack on a Soviet vessel or aircraft. The Kremlin pointed out that the United States has traditionally championed the doctrine of freedom of the seas. The same freedom, says the Soviet statement, applies to outer space. Now, this is where it gets interesting. Just bear with me here. The newsman paused, looked up, and half smiled in a wry amusement at this complexity. He turned a page on his clipboard. There is a new crisis in the Middle East. A report from Beirut via Cairo says that Syrian tanks of the most modern Russian design have crossed the Jordanian frontier. This is undoubtedly a threat to Israel. At the same time, Damascus charges that Turkish troops are mobilizing ... Florence flipped to Channel 6, Orlando and country music. She did not understand and could not become interested in the politics of the Middle East. And of course, the interesting subtext to a lot of the intro to this is how obviously important Middle East politics are to starting this whole nuclear war. And there's a lot of thinly veiled allusions to the book of Revelation, hence the Alas Babylon, that that the final battle of Armageddon is what's unfolding here, and you know, that Israel plays this kind of critical role in all of this. So I find that interesting because that's one of those that it's no accident that that kind of stuff has been put into a lot of modern literature, and by modern I mean in the last 120 years or so, to encourage people to connect these dots and say, gee, you know, Israel's fate hangs in the balance unless evil Russia or evil Iran are held in check. And of course, we, the readers, know that how important the Middle East is, but this poor woman that we're following in the story, she, in the beginning there, she doesn't realize the full import of the Middle East. A lot of people in the camp of modern Zionism believe that there has to be this massive battle between the United States and Russia before any of the other things can happen, like the second coming of Christ or whatever. So I'm kind of curious how liberally this guy pulls from like Scofield Reference Bible and things like that for that kind of material. But anyway, that is Alas Babylon. I had a copy of this when I was like 15 and obviously had to go and seek out a new one on the Amazon. So now I've got it. So again, time permitting, I'll go back through and dig out some of this stuff. It is kind of an interesting thing for me, my personal trivia, that the last sentence of the book stuck with me to the point that I remembered it almost verbatim to when I picked this, when I got this in the mail the other day. A friend of mine was here with me, and I had him open the book and quiz me. I was like, I'm going to tell you what I think the last sentence of the book is. And I was right almost, you know, within just a couple of words. So, so it did stick with me as a ninth grader. This did stick in my little brain there. So anyway, there you go. Alas Babylon from 1959. Of course, this copy reprinted in 2005.